Salima Abule, and this lesson is about lesson planning, how to write your lesson plan. I'm going to be taking you through a sample lesson plan so you can actually do that in practice. The first thing I would like you to do when you write your lesson plan is include a preamble, some sort of pre-information to give anybody who picks up your lesson notes an idea of what to do with the lesson notes. For example, include your term, the week, the session, write out your subject, your topic, the duration of the lesson, indicate the class and the age group you will be teaching. You should also include your learning objectives. Remember, your objectives should measure anything that you plan to teach or you want the children to learn by the end of the lesson. Include your cognitive objectives, your performance objectives, and your affective objectives. For example, you can see the cognitive objective here, the performance objective, and the affective objective. Also include your reference materials. That's anything that you use to write that lesson plan. Include websites, textbooks, the editions, or even previous lesson notes that you use so that anyone who wants to rewrite that lesson or anyone who is trying to trace the source of a particular idea or concept can easily find that. For example, you can see the references here. The pages are indicated. The websites are indicated so that anyone can trace it. Also include your teaching aids. That's any material that you will need to teach that lesson so that it will be easy to source for those materials before your lesson. So this lesson plan is divided into the 5 lesson phases. The starter is the first one, and you can see it's indicated here. I've also used a tabular form to make it easier for you to understand the lesson plan. You can see the duration, the explanation, and the teaching aids required for each step. For example, the starter is going to take 5 minutes, and the description of the starter is here for anyone to find out what they need to do at each point in time. There are no teaching aids for this particular starter. Let's go on to the connect phase. This is where you should explain or connect your starter, whatever starter activity you did. You need to explain it and connect it to the main lesson. You should also refer to previous knowledge at this point, previous knowledge of the subject or something that children already know from their family life or whatever information will be useful for the lesson. Also include the learning objectives at this point. Explain them to the students so that they understand what you want them to learn by the end of the lesson. You can also include your keywords and an explanation or a definition of the keywords so that every student who asks you, okay, what's the meaning of that word or what's the definition of that word, you have the definition handy to explain it to the students and give them the right information. Okay, let's move on to the activate section. This is the point where you actually begin teaching your lesson. You should include as much information as you need to explain the topic properly to the students. You can do this in steps so that each point or each objective is properly addressed by the end of the lesson. For example, I've done this in steps. You can see the first step is recalling the information on the family and why families are important. And then we move on to the types of families. You can see the nuclear family, the polygamous family, and then the extended family. The next step talks about family relationships, defining what those relationships are and identifying some examples of the relationships that can be found in the family. So moving on to step 4, which is the family tree. It's actually the main point of the lesson, and you can see the duration for this is much longer than the others. And I've referred to the chart of a family tree, which is very essential for the lesson. Include any explanation that you need to teach that particular point, and then move on to the next step. This is a very important step of your lesson plan, which is assessment. Assessment even before the students have any opportunity to carry out their classwork or their practicals or whatever. You should have some assessment strategies you've put in to help you evaluate instantly if students have actually understood or they've learned what you want them to learn. For example, I've put some questions about the family tree to help me check if students are really learning before I move on to the next step, which is the demonstration of understanding. Here you can include whatever activity you've planned for the students to demonstrate their understanding and to show you that they've learned what you want them to learn. You can also see that the timing for this particular step is much longer than the other ones to allow students enough time to work through the classwork. And then you can go on to the consolidate phase, which is where you should recap your lesson, go over the main points of the lesson, and make sure that all your learning objectives have been taught. You can refer to them like I did here, for example. Refer to your learning objectives again and ask any questions or use any strategy you wish to measure if students have really understood the lesson. For example, I've decided to use a strategy that allows students to move around the class and interact with their peers. They're supposed to arrange their classmates to depict their family trees, just as a competition to pass time and to make sure that students enjoy the lesson and they've learned something by the end of the lesson. Finally, you should include how you choose to close your lesson. It can be a simple statement or an action asking students to pack up their books or to rest their heads. Anything you want them to do by the end of the lesson, you should do that so that they know the lesson has closed and the next teacher can also be aware that the lesson has closed. It's also good to include your reinforcement, whatever strategy you wish to reinforce the lesson. For example, it can be homework, exam questions. For example, I have done a homework activity here that students should complete at home to be sure that they've really understood the lesson and they've learned something. We've come to the end of this lesson. Thank you for watching.